Have you ever wondered why the conflict between Palestine and Israel persists, even after years of negotiations and peace talks? This question often lingers in the minds of many as they watch the events unfold in the Middle East. To understand this, we must delve into the historical context of the Palestine-Israel conflict. It all started with the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, a move that led to the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their ancestral homes. This displacement wasn't just a change of address. It was and continues to be a harsh reality of losing one's home, identity, and basic human rights. This conflict isn't merely about land, it's about a people's right to exist, to live freely without fear, and to have a place they can call home. The Israel-Palestine conflict is not just a territorial dispute, but a human rights issue that continues to affect millions of lives. To understand the current situation, we must take a journey back in time. Our voyage begins in the aftermath of World War II, with the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, a pivotal moment that marked the establishment of Israel and the start of the Palestinian exodus. This event, known as the Nakba, or catastrophe, saw an estimated 700,000 Palestinians displaced from their homes. Fast forward to 1967, the Six-Day War erupted. In less than a week, Israel seized control of the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. This swift and decisive victory significantly redrew the map of the Middle East. Then came the First Intifada in the late 1980s, a massive Palestinian uprising against Israeli occupation. It was a period marked by civil disobedience, general strikes, boycotts, graffiti, and barricades, but also by significant bloodshed. The turn of the millennium witnessed the Second Intifada. This uprising was far more violent than the first, with a marked increase in suicide bombings and retaliatory military incursions. The death toll on both sides climbed into the thousands. Now let's shift our focus to the recent escalations in East Jerusalem and Gaza in 2021. Palestinians were forcibly evicted from their homes in Sheikh Jarrah, a neighborhood in East Jerusalem, sparking protests and subsequent violent crackdowns. The situation quickly escalated, culminating in a series of airstrikes on Gaza that led to a tragic loss of life. These events are not isolated incidents, but part of a prolonged struggle for self-determination and justice. They are the chapters of a story that dates back more than 7 decades. A story of dispossession and resistance, of injustice and bravery, of oppression and resilience. This is the timeline of turmoil. This is the history we must remember and understand if we are to stand in solidarity with Palestine. Beyond the political conflict, there is a humanitarian crisis unfolding. To fully grasp the situation in Palestine, we must look beyond the headlines and understand the human cost. Ordinary Palestinians are experiencing a life where forced displacement, restrictions on movement, economic hardships, and human rights abuses have become the norm. Imagine waking up one day to find that the home you've lived in for generations is no longer yours. This is the reality for many Palestinians who have been forcibly evicted from their homes to make way for settlements. These displacements are not isolated incidents, but part of a larger pattern of systematic removal and replacement of Palestinian communities. But the crisis doesn't end at displacement. Once evicted, Palestinians face severe restrictions on movement. Roads, checkpoints, and walls hinder their ability to travel freely within their own land. They are often denied access to vital services such as healthcare, education, and even their places of worship. The economic struggle is another facet of this crisis. With limited access to resources and opportunities, many Palestinians live below the poverty line. Unemployment rates are high, particularly among the youth, and the majority of the population relies on humanitarian aid to survive. And then, there are the human rights abuses. Reports of arbitrary arrests, torture, and excessive use of force are common. Children are not spared either, with many being detained and subjected to ill treatment. This crisis is not just about statistics and reports, it's about the daily struggles of ordinary people. It's about the mother who can't provide for her children because her husband was killed in an airstrike. It's about the child who can't go to school because his route is blocked by a checkpoint. It's about the elderly man who can't visit his family because his ID was revoked. It's about the countless Palestinians who live in constant fear and uncertainty. The conflict has not only claimed countless lives but has also robbed the Palestinians of their basic human rights and dignity. The humanitarian crisis unfolding in Palestine is a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of war and conflict. It's a call to the world to stand up for justice and humanity. In face of these injustices, what can we do as global citizens? The answer lies in solidarity, in understanding that the plight of Palestinians is not just their struggle, but a human struggle. Our collective voice, amplified by the power of social media, can influence the course of this conflict. It's through our tweets, our posts, our shares, that we raise global awareness about the harsh realities faced by Palestinians every day. Remember, social media has been instrumental in initiating many social revolutions across the globe. It's a tool that allows us to bear witness and share testimonies from the ground, breaking the barriers of mainstream media narratives. But our responsibility doesn't end there. We must also consider the economic impact of our actions. This brings us to the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement, or BDS. Modeled after the South African anti-apartheid movement, BDS aims to apply economic and political pressure on Israel to end the occupation and grant equal rights to Palestinians. By choosing not to buy products from companies that profit from the occupation, we as consumers can send a powerful message. By urging our institutions to divest from such companies, we can help create an environment where oppression is not profitable. And by calling for sanctions against Israel until it complies with international law, we can help tip the balance towards justice. This is not an easy path. It requires persistence, courage, and the willingness to challenge the status quo. But it is a path that we must tread if we believe in human rights, in justice, and in the rule of law. Standing with Palestine is not about choosing sides in a political conflict, but about standing up for human rights, justice, and international law. Remember, silence in the face of injustice is complicity. Imagine living in a world where your basic human rights are denied, your freedom is restricted, and your homeland is under constant surveillance. This is the reality for Palestinians in the Israeli-occupied territories. Dive into the heart of the matter, where Palestinians face the denial of basic rights and freedoms under Israeli rule. An Israeli NGO, B'Tselem, brought this to light in a report titled, "A Regime of Jewish Supremacy from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, This is Apartheid." This controversial report sparked a global discussion about the nature of Israeli democracy and drew parallels to apartheid South Africa. The report underscores the systemic deprivation of basic freedoms to Palestinians living within the occupied territories and even within Israel itself. The Israeli government's open acknowledgement of its status as a Jewish state has intensified the inequality between Jewish and Palestinian citizens. Apartheid, as defined by the International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment of the Crimes of Apartheid, is the deliberate creation of conditions that hinder the full development of a racial group by denying them basic human rights and freedoms. The Israeli regime stands accused of creating separate reserves and ghettos for Palestinians and taking over their land. The comparison between Israel and apartheid South Africa was once taboo. Now though, the acknowledgement by Israeli Jews themselves has paved the way for exposing and potentially dismantling the Israeli apartheid regime. The narrative of apartheid South Africa and the Israeli apartheid regime is strikingly similar. The international community has denounced one while seemingly supporting the other. Too often, Israel's apartheid regime is glossed over as a conflict or a two-state solution. The author of the report, a Palestinian with personal experience of both apartheid South Africa and Israeli apartheid, insists on the need to dismantle the entire racist system and hold Israel accountable for its actions. The Palestinian narrative is not just about conflict, but also about resilience and the continuous struggle for freedom and equality. The world watches, but what actions does it take? The international community's response to the Palestinian plight has been inconsistent and often contradictory. Let's delve deeper into this. It's no secret that Western governments, particularly the United States and the United Kingdom, have been vocal about the situation in the Palestinian region. They've advocated for restraint from both sides, with the US and UK continually asserting Israel's right to self-defense. But there's a twist in the tale. The narrative of one of the world's most formidable military powers defending itself from those it occupies paints an incomplete and misleading picture of the situation. Let's not mince words here. Joe Biden and Boris Johnson are complicit in Israel's actions against the Palestinians. Their implicit support for this hostility is a testament to their relationship with Israel. Israel was born out of the settler desires of Britain and later the US to maintain Western control of the Middle East. Fast forward to today, as the West faces defeats in its two-decade-long war on terror and declining influence in the Middle East, Israel's role has become increasingly significant. That's why the US and the UK, as its junior partner, continue to provide Israel with billions in funding and weapons and full political cover to carry out actions against humanity with impunity. You don't have to look much further than Priti Patel's secret trips to Israel in 2017 and her attempt to divert foreign aid money to the Israeli military in the occupied Golan Heights. Yet the international community's response has been lackluster at best, turning a blind eye to these actions. The comfort offered to Israel in the United Nations and the international community over the years has yielded no other result than continued defiance of international law and the resolutions of the United Nations. The international community's response, or lack thereof, plays a significant role in perpetuating the situation in the Palestinian region. It's a stark reminder of the power dynamics at play and the need for a shift in the international approach to truly address the plight of the Palestinians. Behind the scenes, the power dynamics at play are far more complex. Western influence and complicity play a significant role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Middle East has long been a region of strategic interest for Western nations, particularly the United States and the United Kingdom. Not only for its rich oil reserves, but also for its political and geographic significance. From the creation of Israel in the aftermath of World War II, Western powers have played a significant role in shaping the region's destiny, often to the detriment of its people. One cannot overlook the role of the United States and the United Kingdom, two nations that have consistently declared Israel's right to self-defense. This narrative, often repeated in Western media, paints a picture of Israel, one of the world's most formidable military powers, as a nation defending itself against the people it occupies. The complicity of Western leaders in Israel's actions against the Palestinians is evident. Take for instance Joe Biden and Boris Johnson, who have been implicit in their support for Israel's recent aggressions. Their relationship with Israel is indicative of the broader Western approach to the region. Israel was born out of the colonial ambitions of Britain and later the United States to maintain Western control of the Middle East. As the West grapples with defeats in its 20-year-long war on terror and declining influence in the Middle East, the role of Israel becomes even more critical. This is why the United States and Britain, as its lesser partner, continue to provide Israel with billions in funding and weapons and full political cover to carry out crimes against humanity with impunity. Look no further than Priti Patel's secret trips to Israel in 2017 and her attempt to divert foreign aid money to the Israeli military in the occupied Golan Heights. Western powers, whether knowingly or unknowingly, contribute to the perpetuation of the conflict and the suffering of the Palestinian people. The reality is, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not just about two nations fighting over land, it's a complex tapestry woven with threads of colonialism, power, and complicity. And until we recognize this, the cycle of violence and suffering will continue to repeat itself. In the face of adversity, the global community has shown remarkable solidarity with the Palestinian cause. Over the past decade, we've witnessed a surge of protests and movements across the globe, standing shoulder to shoulder in support of Palestine. From London to Sydney, from Johannesburg to New York, people have taken to the streets, raising their voices against the suppression of basic freedoms in the involved Palestinian region. These movements are not just a show of solidarity, they are a testament to a global recognition of the Palestinian struggle. They represent a shared understanding that the denial of basic rights and freedoms to Palestinians is not just a regional issue, but a global one, demanding global attention and action. However, in recent times, a disturbing trend has emerged. Efforts have been made to conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, effectively attempting to silence the voices standing up for Palestine. This has had a profound impact on Palestine solidarity activists, creating an atmosphere of fear and hesitation. Yet, despite these challenges, public support for Palestine remains strong. This week alone, we've seen a surge of demonstrations worldwide, a clear indication that the world refuses to be silenced. The global community continues to stand firm, showing the world that the fight for Palestinian freedom will not be quashed by fear or intimidation. This is not just a fight against occupation, it is a fight against systemic racism, against colonialism, and against the violation of human rights. The liberation of Palestine is a global fight, and it is at the heart of the struggle for a just world. The Palestinians are resisting, and it is the duty of the world to echo their resistance, to stand in solidarity with them, and to amplify their voices. The fight for Palestinian freedom is a global one, and the world has a responsibility to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people. As we look to the future, the path to Palestinian freedom is fraught with challenges, but there is hope. The situation in the Palestinian region is a complex issue rooted in historical conflicts, international politics, and systemic injustices. It is a stark reminder of the power dynamics at play in our world, where the strong often dictate the fate of the weak. The denial of basic human rights and freedoms to Palestinians living under Israeli rule is a significant concern that warrants global attention. It's more than a conflict. It's an apartheid, a deliberate creation of conditions that prevent the full development of a racial group, including denying them basic human rights and freedoms. It's a system that segregates, discriminates, and oppresses. The international community, particularly Western powers, play a critical role in the conflict. They must take responsibility for their part in perpetuating the situation. The pretentious assertions of limitation from the two sides are not enough. The rhetoric of Israel's more right than wrong to self-preservation needs to be critically examined. The world must hold Israel accountable for its actions. It's high time to dismantle the entire racist system and ensure the full realization of Palestinians' basic human rights and freedoms. We must turn our global solidarity movements into concrete actions. Protests, public support, and acknowledgement of the situation are the initial steps, but they must translate into policy changes and tangible interventions. The road to justice for Palestinians may be long and arduous, but the world must remain steadfast in its commitment to uphold human rights and demand accountability. The freedom of Palestine is an anti-settler, anti-racist battle, and it must be at the center of our movements. The Palestinians are resisting, and it is our duty to stand in solidarity with them and do the same. The road to justice for Palestinians may be long and arduous, but the world must remain steadfast in its commitment to uphold human rights and demand accountability. Have you ever wondered about the state of human rights in areas of conflict? What if we told you that it's not as black and white as it seems? We're diving into one such area today, where the struggle for statehood and human rights has been a long-standing issue. This is about the Palestinian people, their fight for recognition, and the preservation of their basic human rights. This isn't just an isolated incident. The situation in Palestine has international implications. It questions the very essence of human rights and whether they are universally applicable, regardless of geography or political context. But why should it matter to you? Because as advocates for human rights, this is a story that resonates with us all. It's a vivid reminder that the fight for justice isn't confined within borders. Now let's delve deeper into the history of this struggle, to better understand the present. The Palestinian struggle is not something that appeared overnight. It's deeply rooted in history. Our story begins in the late 40s, following the end of the Second World War. Amidst the chaos, a new nation was born, Israel. The establishment of this state was seen as a sanctuary for Jewish people, who had faced unspeakable horrors during the Holocaust. However, this creation was not without cost. The land that Israel now occupied was formerly known as Palestine, home to a rich and diverse culture. With the birth of Israel, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced, their homes and lands taken away virtually overnight. This mass displacement, often referred to as the Nakba or the catastrophe, marked the beginning of a struggle that continues to this day. In the ensuing years, conflicts sparked between Israel and its Arab neighbors, further exacerbating the plight of the Palestinians. The Six-Day War in 1967 saw Israel take control of the West Bank and Gaza Strip, territories that were home to a significant Palestinian population. This occupation was characterized by systematic human rights abuses, including unlawful killings, forced displacement, abusive detention, and the unjustified destruction of property. As we navigate the labyrinth of history, we encounter the first Intifada in the late 80s and the second in the early 2000s. These were periods of intensified Palestinian resistance against the Israeli occupation, marked by widespread protests and violence. Each time, the human rights situation worsened, with increasing reports of arbitrary detentions, torture, and excessive use of force by Israeli forces. Throughout this historical journey, it's impossible to ignore the human rights issues that have emerged from this situation. The plight of the Palestinians is more than just a political issue. It's a human rights crisis. It's about people who have been denied their basic rights to life, liberty, and self-determination. It's about generations of Palestinians who have grown up under occupation, their lives marked by uncertainty, fear, and loss. This history sets the stage for the current state of affairs, a situation that continues to evolve. Fast forward to today, where does that leave Palestine? Now we find ourselves in a situation where the struggle for Palestinian self-determination feels more urgent than ever. The ongoing Israeli offensive has far-reaching implications not just on the geopolitical landscape, but more importantly, on the daily lives of ordinary Palestinians. This offensive, carefully orchestrated, is a clear attempt to dismantle Palestinian infrastructure and statehood, an affront to the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people. From all corners of the globe, nations bear witness to grave violations of the Geneva Conventions perpetrated by Israel in this offensive. Violations that arguably amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity. In the face of such atrocities, the United Nations and every member state bear a responsibility to uphold humanitarian law. The international response, while varied, has been largely characterized by calls to protect human rights and support the Palestinian cause. The struggle continues, but what can we do about it? Change begins with awareness, and awareness begins with you. The situation in Palestine isn't just a geopolitical issue, it's a humanitarian crisis, a fight for basic human rights. And it's a fight that needs your help. Start by educating yourself. Understand the history, the politics, the people. Don't just read the headlines, dive deep, but don't stop there. Share what you learn. Use your voice to bring attention to the crisis. Use your platforms, your networks, your communities, and advocate, stand up for Palestinian rights at every opportunity. Whether that's by signing a petition, attending a rally, or writing to your representatives. Finally, support the organizations working tirelessly on the ground. They need resources to provide aid, to document abuses, and to fight for justice. Remember, to stand with Palestine is to stand with humanity. Your voice can make a difference.